Hi, y'all. We're excited to have you here and want to welcome you to Flatiron School's Coding for Beginners Intro to JavaScript. My name is Corey Mickelson, and I am the Marketing Events Coordinator here at Flatiron School. A big part of my job is hosting free introductory workshops like this evening's event, as well as Tech Talks, where we cover hot topics within the tech industry monthly. A quick reminder, we're going to be using the chat button as our main source of communication tonight. So make sure you set that little blue button from panelist and host to everyone so that we can all chat together. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host for the evening, Sam Boahen. He is one of our lead software engineer instructors. Take it away, Sam.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? Can we get some reactions in the chat? You just drop some emojis. Just because I'm an emoji person, as y'all can see. Just drop some emojis in the chat. Just kind of want to see how everybody's feeling today. Awesome, 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 awesome. Cool. Phenomenal. And if you're not having a great day, that's okay too, folks. But we're going to try to make sure that we make the most of this evening, and hopefully, get some laughs in, learn a little bit, maybe, hopefully. Awesome. I appreciate y'all participating in the chat. Legit, I love them emojis. Bam. Cool. So a little bit about me. My name is Sam. I use he, they pronouns. I am from the Boogie Down Bronx. Shout out anybody in the city. My family's from Ghana and West Africa as well. So shout out anybody from the motherland who will be joining. If I'm here giving shout outs, we'll be giving shout outs all day. But a little bit about my background. I graduated from SUNY New Paltz with a degree in computer engineering. And then I also graduated from the software engineering program at the Flatiron School, what feels like honestly years ago, but literally what, 2 years now, a year now? Who's keeping track? Who knows what day it is anymore? So my goal today with y'all is just to get a little bit of experience talking about what HTML is, what JavaScript is, what CSS is, and how it is that that magical trichotomy kind of comes together to make things happen in the browser itself. So I'm just going to drop this in the chat again. Make sure you change the little blue button to the bottom to chat. Oh, that's Flatiron School. I was just making sure I was doing the same thing. I'm just going to drop this in the chat again. If anyone wants to code along, this is the website that you can use to get started. You absolutely do not have to code along. Everyone learns differently, and that's something I always want to highlight. There are some folks who, by them following along, that's the best way that they learn. Some folks learn best just by paying attention to what's happening and absorb the material that way. So just know that all ways of learning are okay. And if you're not necessarily coding along and keeping up, that is not a problem at all. So to kind of guide y'all as to how to get started, I'm just here in the incognito tab on the right side of the screen. And then I'm already signed into the account on the left side of the screen. You absolutely don't have to make an account to get started today. And this is why I really like this website, REPLit.com. So without making a website, we're gonna make a website. So maybe I'm getting ahead of myself subconsciously. But without making an account or anything, you can just click the button that says start coding. When you click on that, it is going to ask you to generally set up an account. But this is where, if you want, you can continue with Google, you continue with GitHub, you continue with Facebook. So each of those are kind of a quick way to kind of get started. So I'm going to give folks some time to get situated with that if you're choosing to code along. If you're not going to code along, make sure you get yourself a nice glass of water, some juice, some coffee, whatever it is, a snack, and get situated and ready to go. So again, you can make an account if you choose to, or you can quickly get started by continuing with your Gmail or with a GitHub account or with Facebook. So I'll give folks a little bit of time to get started with that. And while that's happening, I'm actually going to just start the repository on my side. And I'll kind of show y'all how to get that started there. So again, just to repeat the steps, I'm going to drop the link in the chat in case anyone is just joining us. So if you're choosing to code along, you will just go to REPL, so REPLIT.com, and that will bring you to this landing page here. And then you will just click Start Coding. When you click Start Coding, it will prompt you to log in with a Gmail, GitHub, or Facebook. If you want to make an account, then you can, but you don't have to. If you choose to go one of the other 3 links to quickly connect your account. Cool. So I'm not sure if folks are familiar with Zoom, but maybe I'm getting into like instructor mode at the moment. But I'm just going to open up my participants channel. And if I check attendees, I see there's a hand up. And is that a question that we have? Okay, there's a couple hands up there. Do folks have questions, or are you kind of playing with the participants channel? So I see someone says, I no longer see Start Coding. So if you go in and then you sign in with Google, it will prompt you, for example, to log in with your Gmail. And then after that, you should be logged into the application from there. So just giving folks a little bit of time to get that situated. I figured this is a little bit more streamlined, because then if not, I would have to make sure that everyone has VS Code installed and their environment is okay, but this website handles all of that for everyone. So by using the participants channel, if folks are having any conflict getting set up, if you could please throw up a red X. Chat. I signed in, but I don't see Start Coding anymore. So that's okay. So if you signed in, then I'm actually going to show you how to actually set a repository up. So if everyone is all signed up, then we're good to go. So again, and just reminding everyone, if you're using the participant channel and you're raising your hand, the way that this Zoom is set up, we actually are directing all questions into the chat. So if there's any conflict that you are having, please share that in the chat. I'll be checking on the chat here and there as well, but Corey will also be helping out with highlighting things that may be coming up in the chat. So again, before we kind of get started, just giving folks a little bit of time, I'm going to drop the link again. And then ironically follow up by saying, you do not have to code along, but if you choose to, this is the website that we're going to be using to facilitate the typing of our code. And then what you would do is you would be welcomed by a page like this that says Start Coding. When you click that, it'll prompt you to sign in with Gmail, GitHub, Facebook. You can create an account if you want to, or you can use one of these fast links to get started. After that, you will not see Start Coding anymore. You should see that you have the option to like confirm your account name and everything like that. And then you will eventually be able to see a drop down here on the side, and you can click home. So that's where I'm just going to begin from there. So I'm going to make this full screen. Awesome. So we're going to be okay, folks. Let's inhale, exhale. And if you're not able to get everything set up, that is completely okay. Remember, this is being recorded and you'll be able to follow along later on. So what we're going to do is, again, by clicking the drop down here, we can get like some options, and I clicked home to get to the page that I currently am on. And then I'm just going to click the create button. This is going to prompt me to create a new repository or a new code base to work with at this time. And what we're going to do is scroll down, and you'll see that there is a lot of options, but about, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down, we have HTML, CSS, and JS. So if we click that, we'll be prompted to then give our code base a title. So we can call this something like learning some JS. You can name it whatever it is that you want. You can name it after yourself. Like I can call this Sam if I wanted to. Let's just do that. I'm gonna name this Sam. Let's make it a little bit streamlined here. So again, just to backtrack, once I have been able to set up an account by linking Gmail or GitHub, or if you did choose to create your own account, you would set up all the credentials there where it's just going to ask you what name you prefer to go by if you're an instructor. And then if you see this menu bar on the side, you can click home. Clicking home will bring you to a page that looks like this that says get started. And then I just open the menu on the side and click create. Next, we scroll down. I pick HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can also type in the bar to search it. So if you type HTML, you can also find the code base that we're working with there. And then we're just going to just keep it simple and just put your name as the title of the application. Is there a reason to use this instead of a code editor like Visual Studio Code? So if you already have a code editor installed, feel free to create a directory and follow along that way as well. I just figured that not everyone who's beginning development necessarily already has Visual Studio Code installed and everything like that. You probably saw before when the screen wasn't big screen, I have my VS Code down here, but that sometimes takes a bit of time to install and configure. Awesome, cool. So I'm just gonna bring this to full screen again. And again, I just named the code base Sam, and then I'm just going to click create REPL. So what the name REPL stands for is read, evaluate, print loop. So it pretty much is a website that's designed so that you can just quickly get started, and it's pretty much just reading what you type, evaluating it, printing it, and looping. So I'm just gonna check the chat. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Cool. So we can see here that we have an HTML file here. We have what just looks like a white square. And then we have something on the lower right-hand side that says console and shell. So this shell is our terminal. So if we were doing anything more involved, like running terminal commands, if anyone is familiar with that, you will know that, for example, we can click ls and hit enter, and it will list out everything in the current space that we're focusing on. So if you see, we have an index.html file, a JavaScript file, and a CSS file. These three files are actually corresponding with the three files that we notice here on the side: HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So if I take my index.html, kind of just drag it over, it'll put it in its own specific tab. If I take my JavaScript and drag it over, it'll put its own specific tab. And you can rearrange these if you want to. You can also just click on them one at a time to make them show up. It's up to your preference. I just like having mine at the top here because then I usually click around that way, but you can also click around on the side there. So how are we doing, folks? Can I get a thumbs up either in the participant channel or drop some emojis in the chat? How are we doing? Thumbs up, maybe a raised hands emoji. Awesome. So my raised hand emoji. Oh, awesome. We're having a party. Cool. Phenomenal. Awesome. Cool. Just want to make sure I'm not moving too quickly for anyone, because again, we're just getting started. So I'm just going to give an overview of what our goals are today. Because as is anything you do, it's important to set your intentions. You want to make sure that you're going in with the mindset to accomplish what it is that you want to do. Sometimes, as the saying goes, it's the journey, not the destination, and you learn what it is that you actually got out of this later. But it also is good to set a mindset to what it is that we're accomplishing here. So again, today we're going to be learning about HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and how it is that they work together. And each of these are different languages. These are different programming languages. And that's usually where I like to begin, just conceptualizing what it is that's happening here. So I'll take a little bit to kind of just talk about, like I said, like setting that mindset and intention as far as what it is that we're doing here today. And then after that, we're going to review some fundamentals, and then we're going to build something together. So I was thinking maybe something like either like a Pokemon game or something, or like making a blog, something where we can, create something interactive. So it's not going to be like crazy rendering with like the new like Pokemon like Switch graphics and stuff like that, but we're going to get some images off the internet, and we can put our Pokemon on the page, or if you want, or if folks want, we can put like pets or something like that. We'll kind of take a poll on it when the time comes. But again, we need our fundamentals, and we need to be comfortable with the tools that we're using in order to make things happen. So to get started, whenever like I'm doing any type of beginner level programming, I feel like folks usually enter with the mindset, yeah, I'm gonna learn how to code. Yeah, I'm gonna learn how to like program and so on and so forth. And what I usually like to recommend to folks is let's think about this a little bit differently as far as like learning how to code or learning how to program. Because when our mindset is we're learning how to code and learning how to program, if the code isn't working, sometimes we don't feel as successful in what it is that we're trying to accomplish. But when we realize, like I told y'all, each of these are different programming languages. So what I like to say is instead of thinking specifically that we are coding or programming, we're just learning to speak a language. I know some folks are just like, well, that sounds even more stressful. Well, when we think about languages, think about the fact that regardless of if you're speaking English, if you're speaking Urdu, if you're speaking Chinese, if you're speaking Patois, if you're speaking Creole, if you're speaking Tree, if you're speaking Japanese, there is a way to express yourself. In all languages, there's a way to say hello. In all languages, there's a way to express joy. In all languages, there's a way to express what it is that you're trying to communicate. And one of the things I like to highlight is that we are translating from human language into programming language. And that's actually what it is that we're doing. So I like to bring that there to kind of conceptualize this concept. So everyone, legit, honestly, this chat is like such a party. I'm having a blast. Are you having a blast? I'm having a blast. So everyone in the chat, what I want you to do is just drop your primary, like, or any language that you're familiar with. So like if anyone knows like a couple different languages, just drop those in the chat, like whatever it is that you know. So this can be programming languages or languages that we speak as people. So I'll tag in, I'll put Tree in here. I'll put Spanglish. Spanglish. Boom. Awesome. Cool. So I see different languages dropping in the chat. I see different human languages and different programming languages. Awesome. This is super cool. Y'all are so awesome. Look at all these different languages. I love that somebody put jazz in there as well. When we really talk about what language is. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I like gibberish there to end it. So we all speak different languages, but we usually try to find a commonality of ways to communicate with one another, or at least to translate the expressions that we are trying to convey to one another. So this kind of starts to leverage the dialogue of the fact that HTML is a language, JavaScript is a language, and CSS is a language. And each of these languages have different syntax and the way that we speak them. But there are certain ways that each of these three languages know how to interact with and translate with one another. So our job as developers is we're kind of facilitating that translation process. So this is where I usually like to start drawing on the screen a little bit. And I say we have human language. So HL for human language, and I kind of just shorthand it like that. And then we have programming languages. So we speak different human languages, And then there are different programming languages as well. And similar to how we translate between the languages that we speak, we translate between these programming languages, but we as a developer are trying to translate our human thoughts to the compiler so that it can compile and comprehend what it is that we're trying to say. So let's think about it, folks. If whatever language it is that you speak as a human being, so let's focus on our human languages for a little bit. So the human language that you speak, just take a second to think about how many years you've been speaking that language. It could be multiple languages. I saw a bunch of y'all are like super polyglots. You have like all different languages that you know. Feel free to drop in the chat how many, like put the language and how many years you've been speaking that language. So English, I would put about like 20 years. Tree as well. I would say really getting better in the past couple years. So T. Awesome. So we're seeing a whole bunch of like different languages and different numbers following those. So French for 26 years, Japanese and French for 20 years, so on and so forth. Awesome. Cool. So let's put a pause on that. Now I want each of y'all to drop into the chat how many years or how long you've been speaking a particular programming language specifically. 0. Less than a year, 0. 12 years, 0. 1 year, 1 year, 0. 5 years, 0. 1 year. So here's where I start to kind of, and I think y'all kind of see where we're going with this. Here's where I start to kind of like connect the flow of what's happening here. A lot of times when we're saying, oh, I got to learn how to code. I have to learn how to program and so on and so forth. And we think it's supposed to come to us so easily. But when we start to realize that you're speaking a language, ask yourself what you could actually say when you were 7 months old or 5 years old or 1 month old or less than a year old. This is where you start to really set your mindset and intention that it takes some time to learn how to speak these languages. And this is where I usually highlight the compassion that you should have with yourself in the journey that you're taking to learn these languages. So in what we're gonna do today, you might not pick everything up in one day because you didn't learn how to speak in one day. You didn't learn how to express yourself in whatever language it is that is most comfortable to you in one day. When you were 1 day old, you probably knew how to say gaga boo boo and ask for food by crying. So if today things aren't translating to you immediately, that is okay. But I'm going to try my best to make this as digestible as possible for everyone. So I'd always want to kind of start the preface there. So
Someone in the chat asked if we could make the font a little bit bigger. I don't know if there's a way to increase the size of the screen just a tad bit.
let me take a look and see if I can maybe do Command Shift plus. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Is that a little bit better for folks? And can I write the code you have done for notes? Yep. So actually, as soon as we start with the page, this code is already loaded for us. So a lot of this we don't really necessarily need, in a sense that it's not going to change too much of what's going on. And a lot of this, these meta tags here is just more so for the metadata that is going to be going into everything. So I'll kind of flow through. Awesome. So we're getting good feedback that folks can see the text a little bit better. So I'm going to kind of flow through what's going on in this HTML and also how it is that this interface works so that everyone can kind of be comfortable if you're coding along or if you're going to follow along later via recording. So one of the fundamental things that we need to do just to get this working is we click the play button here at the top and it will run our code. So I think we all know that hello world is just a classic thing when you're a developer. This is the plain text that's showing up here on line 10, hello world. So when we hit play, we see that that's showing up. So if I maybe capitalize the W and I hit the play button, we see that that's reflecting here. So this is going to act as our browser. So this is the actual web page that we're going to be developing for today. A few minutes ago, how do we get to the screen? And yeah, Corey just dropped the link in the chat there. So you would go over to that site and then you will click start coding, and then it will prompt you to log in with either Gmail, GitHub, or Facebook. And then you can also just choose to make an account if you'd like to. If anyone is joining and is unable to get the screen going like this, that is okay. This is all being recorded and you can get it when everything is sent to you in the video. So far, we just have Hello World showing up here. So that is coming from our HTML. So what is HTML to begin with? Because I feel like a lot of times when we're developing, there are a bunch of big words and abbreviations being thrown around, and a lot of it doesn't really feel digestible for us. So one of the things I'm super passionate about is translating some of these terms to try to make them as digestible as possible so folks really get a better idea of what it is that we're doing. What is HTML? HTML is hypertext, my apologies, hypertext markup language. So the HTML is, the HT part is the hypertext. What does that really mean? That hypertext just means that you have text that you can click on that can take you somewhere else. So these are the links that come up as far as like the internet and going between different web pages. And then the markup language is pretty much the fact that we are marking up text that makes sense to us with tags that the compiler is able to understand. So this is how we start our translation process and making sure that when we write hello world, because we're not putting in any particular tag, it's just showing up as plain text. But we can mark up the text with these tags so that it's going to be presented in a different way. So for example, a classic tag that folks might be familiar with is something like an H1, which is just short for a header. So if I make an H1, and so each of our tags are opening up with these angle brackets here, or the carets, the opening caret. And then we need to close each one of these tags as well. So we're going to take this hello world and I'm just going to cut and paste. So cut and paste, and it's going to show up between the two tags. What you can also do is just have typed it yourself again. I say hello everyone, a little smiley face. If we click the play button, it should reflect hello everyone. We doing okay, folks? Because a lot of what is happening is just stacking fundamentals. Awesome, cool. So I'm always team small victory. So if you were able to get that H1 to say something, give yourself a round of applause. You're doing phenomenal, folks, okay? We're gonna get there a little bit at a time. So we have an H1 on our web page. So an H1 is just a header tag. So if we want to create, let me see if this has the same shortcuts as VS Code. It does. I can copy and paste quickly, but I'm going to type it slowly, but just making sure I have this for later if I need to copy things a bunch of times. So with our headers, there's different sizes that they can be. So we can have an H1, which is the biggest size. I don't know why they decided to make the number 1, which is the smallest number, the biggest tag, but hey, that's just how it goes. So if we want the next size over, we can say H2. And then when you make a closing angle bracket, you can put hello everyone again. I'm just going to copy this here, copy, paste, and then click play. And look at that. We have hello everyone and hello everyone again, but in a smaller size. What is the shortcut to copy the code down below? I love that you asked that because that's one of the things when after you're a developer for some time, you know a whole bunch of different shortcuts and so on and so forth. But as much as I wanted to do that, is where I was like, let's slow it down. We just started. But if anyone is interested, if you just put your cursor in the same line and you just do, if you're on Windows, you would do Control C to copy, or if you're on Mac, you would do Command C to copy. You copy and then you paste, and it will just drop the same line below if you want that. So if you want to, after this program, kind of flex a little bit and be like, look at me, folks, I'm a real developer. I'm making stuff happen quickly. You can do that. So again, that was, if you just put your cursor at the end of the line that you want to copy, you just do Command C if you're on Mac, Control C, and then you just do Command or Control V respectively, and it will paste everything over. Control Enter to run the code quicker. Yeah, so you can also, instead of hitting play, if you look at whatever it is prompting you when you hover over the play button, it might say Command Return if you're on Mac, or it might say Control Return if you're on Windows. You can also do that to reload the page quicker. So for the time being, I'm just gonna keep pressing the play button, but you can feel free on your own machine to do Command and Enter. Because the way my keyboard is, that's actually a little bit further for me. So like it's a little easier for me to actually just click. Awesome, cool. So again, we have headers and we have headers of different sizes. I believe headers go as far as up to 6. So we're going to take this 2, make it a 3. We're gonna take this next 2, make it a 4. Boom. And then we're gonna make this a 5. And then we're going to make this a 5 as well. And we're going to make this a 6. And we're going to make this a 6. So if I click the play button, look at that, folks. It looks like a seeing test or something like that when everything keeps like narrowing down. So we're making different headers. And each one of the numbers that we apply with that H is actually making the text smaller the further down we go. Cool. Y0H. Why does the H that you put at the end have a forward slash to it? Awesome. It's a really good question that we got going there. And Corey, if I'm missing any questions, please let me know as well. So we got a question as to why it is that we start our H1 tag like this, and then we have another one with a forward slash at the end. So as far as speaking this language of HTML, what is happening when we put a forward slash with the same looking tag is we're actually closing that tag. So there are some tags that are self-closing, and there are some tags that you need to provide a corresponding tag to close it. So if I were to kind of pseudocode, which is a term that is described as when you're writing something in a piece of code that isn't actually going to compile, it's not going to actually amount to anything in the actual browser, but it is a window for you to put some comments in. So you see if command forward slash. So if you do command forward slash or command question mark or control question mark, if you're on Windows, it'll open up a window of comments. So we can make little notes for ourselves in the code base without disturbing the actual code. So if I just keyboard mash really quickly and then refresh the page, look at that. This QWERTY UOP is not showing up on the page. It's inside a scope of comments is what it's called. So this is where you as a developer can make your own notes for yourself. So what I'm going to do in that comment space and scope is kind of demonstrate that the general syntax for HTML tags is having some type of tag. So let's just call it tag. And then that's for the opening part of it. And then you would have the same tag, but with the forward slash in order to close it. So that's why I write the H1, I put some text between it, and then I write the same thing again with the forward slash. So I hope that helps with that question as well. Next line automatically indents. Everything above the hello, everyone, is automatically typed when you select the HTML. Yep. Are the headers unlimited? Okay, I answered that one, just making sure I'm catching up with the chat. I didn't have the forward slash in it and it yielded the same results anyways. Interesting, let's take a look at that. So if we take the forward slash out, let's see what happens. I click, yeah, it is giving the same output. So this is where I would highlight something very key here. And this is going to be a quick session of Sam drawing on the screen for explanation. So when it comes to programming, or like I say, speaking these programming languages, you're going to notice that there is something at the beginning of priority, which is unarguable, and that is syntax. So your syntax has to be correct. The compiler needs to at least have some idea what you're trying to say. So similar to speaking different languages. Sometimes if you're saying something to someone, they might not be saying it in the exact way that you would, but you can generally kind of say like, okay, I have some idea what you're trying to get at. So with the way that this syntax is written, even though it is not as conventional as possible, it is still able to be comprehended by the compiler. What I usually recommend is try to stay as close as possible to conventions and concepts when you're developing. And the way that HTML is intended to be written is by having opening tags and closing tags. So there are certain times where if you happen to omit that forward slash, it might be okay because the compiler might still be able to translate and say, oh, okay, you're just trying to put an H1 tag on here. But if we were doing something more involved, it could cause an issue. So something like this with an H1 tag, which is a very practical tag, the compiler is still able to translate as to what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So if we continue to not abide by some of these conventions, the syntax is going to be further away from the compiler to comprehend. So you might notice that this is working okay here in this specific case for this H1, but when it comes to our concepts and conventions, usually HTML tags have a corresponding closing to them as well. So awesome. So hopefully that kind of clarifies for folks who are following along as well. We're doing phenomenal, y'all. I see all of the emojis in the chat. I see folks interacting. This is what it's about. We're creating a community. We're all here to try to learn how to speak each one of these programming languages. So let me just clear the screen real quick. And this was just a quick overview of just creating some tags. There are a bunch of different tags. And we can't necessarily just get into building something if we don't really know what each tag's role is.
One question before you clear everything. What was the keyboard shortcut to create the notes shown in green for a PC? I think you said control.
So it is, if you're on Windows, you'll type control and the forward slash button, which also for some keyboards has the question mark on it. And if you're on Mac, it's command and that forward slash button as well. So it will create a space of comments. And here you can leave little notes for yourself like, hey, you're doing awesome. And if anyone remembers AIM days, we have the little classic heart from way back when. And you can write these things to yourself to help yourself organize your thoughts and plan without disturbing the code. See that none of that is showing up. So to make this a little bit more readable, I'm going to remove this quote. And for moral support, I'm going to leave this comment here. But general rule of thumb, we have an opening tag and a closing tag. As y'all get more comfortable, I'll remove this comment as well. Cool. So let's kind of flow through this HTML structure a little bit there. Some more quick way to get probably go to work on, honestly. You can just cool. I see there's another suggestion for syntax in the chat as well. So let's take a look at that. So we have this way here, though I wouldn't recommend omitting your closing tag. We have this way here, which I would more so recommend because this is more fundamentally conventional. And the closer things are to the syntax and convention, the less likely it is to break. And then we have a suggestion in the chat as well of omitting completely that close tag there and keeping the same H1. Let's see what this does. I click and look at that. We have 3 different ways to write that H1 syntax. So shout out the person who dropped that suggestion in the chat. And again, this is what you're gonna realize as you are becoming a developer. There are so many different ways that you can approach things, just like speaking a language. There are certain ways that I express myself. There are certain ways that Corey expresses herself, and there's certain ways that you all express yourselves. Even if we are all speaking English, we can express ourselves in different ways. So whichever one of these 3 syntaxes are the most comfortable for you is what I would recommend that you flow with. So once there's a point in time where one of these syntaxes is causing an error for us, is where we'll roll back to the one that is the most conventional so that we minimize the opportunity for an error to arise. Legit coding slang, as I see in the chat there. So if we go to the top and kind of flow through our entire HTML structure really quickly, we see that we have this doc type tag here, which is pretty much literally making this an actual HTML file. If not, it's just a Microsoft Word document or a Word document in whatever platform. It's just a plain sheet of paper, but digitally. So once we do this, the page, our file has the ability to comprehend hypertext markup language, HTML. Let's expand that. So in here, we have 2 key spaces. So let me just indent this a little bit so that we can get our ability to open and close. And then I'll kind of clean up some of this syntax here as we go through it. Because since I did enlarge the screen, it is kind of wrapping stuff to the next line and so on and so forth. So I'll try to make an effort to clean up some of the code a little bit so it's a little bit more readable. So in our HTML, we have a head tag. We also have a body tag. So if I kind of look at where our body tag is, I think because we're using this syntax, it's not showing up that our body tag is the closing tag as well. So I'm just going to comment this line out temporarily. Just for demonstration purposes. I do like the code slang. So if I close this body tag, okay, it's still not corresponding with the closing body tag as well. Because this body tag here is blue, is white instead of being blue like this one. Let me take our H1s really quickly, and I'm just going to do a cut and paste. So I'm going to cut it just so that we see everything as streamlined as possible. There we go. Cool. So we have our HTML tag. This is the actual scope that this is happening on. This is our HTML document altogether, but this is where our actual HTML should be written between. If I hit enter between those, we have a head tag, and then we have a body tag. So if we kind of think about this in a little bit more digestible and practical ways, our head tag, kind of like ourselves, this is where our brain is. This is where we think and so on and so forth. Any information that we generally should know about would go in our head tag. So in here, there's some meta tags in here, which is just inputting metadata into the HTML document. This is stuff that is not necessarily going to be the end all be all of the code base, but these are just some fundamental configuration tags that are here in our meta tag. So this is specifying the set of characters that we're using. So every letter is considered a character. This is specifying the width of our device, well, the width of the view page to match the device that we're using. And then this title tag here is actually something that's pretty neat that you can play with. If I put in here like some keyboard mash, we will actually see, let me see if it reflects, because we don't have this tab actually in the browser. Yeah, this one's not going to show up here in the browser because we're working in like a web-based IDE or like development center. But if anyone is following along in VS Code or another text editor, when you edit the title, what happens is it will actually change the name that's showing up here in your browser tab. So let me click this and see if anything reflected, and it did not, because we're working in this particular space here. So this title tag just says, hey, what is the title of this application? What's going to show up on the name of the browser tab itself? This link tag is actually important for linking anything that is going to connect to our actual website. So if I hit enter here, just to format this a little bit better, we kind of see this pattern happening of some keyword in light blue, an equal sign, and then some orange text in quotes. So one way that you'll see HTML formatted sometimes is like this, where you have a tag like this, which is a link tag to link information into our document. And it is a self-closing tag. So if y'all recall, we're talking about which tags open, which tags close. This is a tag that can close itself. So it doesn't need to be written like this, where you write link and so on and so forth. Though you could write it like this if you chose to, you do not have to. Usually when you notice that there are things that have a opening, that are self-closing tags, that is something that you can shorten the tag so that you don't have to write another extra, like 8 letters or whatever it is there. So this link tag is actually linking to our CSS style sheet. So this href is actually what is creating a link, and it is linking to our CSS style sheet. So if folks remember the files that we have on the side here, as I slowly expand the text editor, we see something called style.css. That is linking in our style sheet. And then this key here is specifying the relevance of what it is that we're linking, which is a style sheet. And then this is specifying the type of information that we're going to be linking in. So it's text-based and it is CSS specifically. Just following up on the chat, noticing y'all dropping some things in there. You copy the URL on the browser. Awesome, cool.
I got one question with what is viewport for?
So this is just specifying the width of the actual page itself. So usually whenever you start an HTML document, you usually want to leave it to the standard width of the device that you're using. So that, so if your folks are doing like mobile development is where you notice that you can kind of play with the width that the device is showing up as. So it's optimized for certain mobile platforms. But for today's intents and purposes, we're going to leave our device width to match whatever it is that you are working on. So that we can get a full page or however much space it is that this viewport here is showing on your browser. So this is what's going on in our head tag. This is what our HTML knows about. So here we see that we're linking in our CSS. So this is always a great opportunity to go look at that CSS style sheet. This is how, even though these 3 different files are speaking 3 different languages, they have the ability to link and connect to one another. So in our style sheet, this is where we actually will style and decorate our application. So everyone is on a different progression on the journey of being like a style guru or knowing how to do some fundamental things. And sometimes this is something that folks realize that they enjoy more than the actual development of the logic and the HTML structure. Some folks like to actually design and style the page. So what I'm going to do is just change the background really quickly of our application. So before I do that, I'm going to go into our body tag and I'm going to bring back our text so that we actually have something that is nice to look at there. So I have this on copy and paste. If you want, you can write your H1 tags again. So I just hit play again and we see that going. So we're going to go into our style sheet. And what we're actually going to do is target the body of our HTML. As we can see, the stuff that's in our head tag isn't necessarily showing up in the browser, but it is impacting our ability to know what this HTML should be aware of. But in our body tag is where we're actually displaying stuff to the browser. So what I'm going to do in the style sheet is I'm going to target the body by typing body. And then in this body, you can choose to do curly braces or not. Sorry, it should be body. You can choose to do curly braces or not. I choose to do curly braces like we saw before. There are different ways that you can write your syntax, and sometimes you can omit or leave out certain things. So in this body tag here, I'm actually going to target the background. So background, sorry, I'm trying to hit tab to, so background, and then color. And I'm going to set that to something like green. I know, so I'm going to do green real quick for that. And let's see how this reflects on our application. So it doesn't look like our background is necessarily changing. Let me switch back the syntax there as it was suggesting. So if I do background, background, and if I do color, and then do green, and hit play. Why is our background not changing? Let me just cross-reference this real quick for y'all. CSS sometimes is as awesome as it is to create things that are aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes it doesn't do exactly what you ask it to. So the background, let me just try the background key itself and do green. Huh. Interesting. Background is not changing here on the CSS. Let me just cross-reference this really quickly. CSS, boom. Background dash color. We're targeting the body. Oh, probably this colon is throwing me off there. Boom. So background dash color. If we do green now, there we go, folks. We got green. So we saw how as I was getting the background to change, because my syntax was incorrect here, it was disturbing the process. So far, HTML file was able to translate and compile what it is that was happening, but our actual CSS wasn't able to translate properly what we meant there because I had an extra colon there. So we can start to see how, even though this doesn't look like it's throwing us a literal error, because my syntax was not correct, the background was not changing. Let me just swipe over to where we were again and make sure that I'm keeping up with the chat. Awesome. Cool. Do we have any other questions at the moment?
Somebody was asking, can you do the CSS in the same page, like inside the head quotation marks?
Also inside the actual head tag here, if you could write the CSS.
A little farther.
There wasn't any other details. That's all I got.
Use by body here or no, got you. Yes, that's internal CSS. Yeah, so you could write your CSS in that scope as well. As you're going to notice when we focus on our script tag, we can also write stuff in our script tag, but a key, yeah, so precisely. A key programming paradigm is something called separation of concerns. So the reason why we even have these separate languages is because each one does its job really well. So our goal usually is to actually maximize the file type or the scope in which we're going to get optimum functionality. So you can put your style into your HTML directly, but it is more so recommended that you style specifically in your style sheet. You write your JavaScript in your JavaScript file, and your HTML's responsibility is the default state of the page upon loading. Awesome. We're making strides, folks. So we got a couple tags. We see how our CSS is linked here. If anyone has any recommendation for other colors, I'm open to it. So we don't have to stare at this super vibrant green. We can do like maybe like a pink. I hope it's not, do like a light pink, something that's a little bit less awesome. Look at that. Let's roll with the light pink. Cool. And again, this is why y'all have the opportunity to build your application as well. Feel free to change your background to beige. Feel free to change your background to baby blue or any color of the sort. I think I'm gonna roll with pink for the time being. Awesome. So our page is loading and now our style sheet is linked into it. So now I want to talk a little bit about our body tag. So I'm just going to close our head tag for the time being. And we're going to focus on the body tag and we're going to focus on our script tag because we start to see this is how our JavaScript is being loaded into the page. So we can see that anything we put in our body tag is actually how things show up in the browser. And things that we're going to write in our JavaScript file are being linked in here in the body tag. So this is one choice of a programming paradigm where you can choose to put your script tag in your body tag. So I know when it comes to developing and speaking these languages, everyone has very strong opinions and very strong preferences about what goes where. I'm going to show y'all the two places that you can put your script tag and the recommendations if you do that. The script tag always go at the end of the HTML, and that's one of the key things that I was about to delve into. So y'all are in sync with me. So we notice here that our script tag is inside our body tag. If we were to go into our script real quick and just write something called console.log, which I'll extrapolate upon shortly, but you know, just roll with it for now. And then I will come back and unpack what's actually happening here. But I can tell you that this is going to log information to the console. So if you look at the lower right-hand corner, if I also write, hello, folks, here, little smiley face, when we run our entire program, we're going to see that our H1s are showing up in the browser, and we're also seeing hello, folks, show up in the console there. So this at least is confirming to us that our script tag is connected properly. So this is one way you can have your script tag if you choose to. So for the intents and purposes, what we're going to do today, you're not going to really notice the difference of some of the conflicts we can run into with having our script tag in our body. But something that can happen is something called asynchronous issues. So, whoa, Sam, you said this is gonna be digestible. Why are you throwing these words at us? Let's unpack it. Asynchronous. So if folks are familiar with the term etymology and like the study of words and language and so on and so forth, a lot of times we kind of look at the terms that we're interacting with in life in general, but especially in some certain particular scopes when we're working with these programming languages, that you can kind of start to translate what it is that is intended in that word. I'm gonna put this in a comment block and I'm going to say write asynchronous. Also, folks, I can code, but my spelling is not always on point. So if you notice that I misspelled something, let me know, because that dyslexia just got some of the words like plain double Dutch sometimes and some of the letters flipping around. But asynchronous. So in here, we can see sync. So if we kind of think about this in even just like English, like syncing up, synchronizing is in there. And then we can also look at another word that's hidden in there as well. We have in here chronos, like chronos. If anyone is super into mythology and stuff like that, time. So we start to realize that usually across languages, is the negation of something. Synchronous is about not being in sync or on time. So keep that in your back pocket as well for when you sign up for a program and you're just like, yeah, I know the word asynchronous and I know that JavaScript can become asynchronous. Sam taught me that. So sometimes if your script tag is in your body tag, you can have an issue where things haven't loaded yet and you're trying to interact with them. We might not notice that conflict today because we're not going to be building anything super high level to the point where we're handling asynchronous functionality. But this is usually where I just, give that advice there. The other place you can put your script tag is actually in your head tag. If you put your script tag in your head tag, it is advised that you actually put in a keyword called defer in there. So what defer does is say, hey, don't read the script tag until you finish reading everything in the body tag. So this makes sure that our JavaScript is not going to be trying to interact with our HTML elements until everyone has loaded on the page. So my personal preference is to put the script in the head tag and put a defer on it so that it will be deferred and read later, because our compiler generally reads the code from top to bottom. But once it hits the script tag and it sees that defer keyword, it says, okay, I'm going to read this later. So if it is going to come to the body tag, it's going to read the tags, then it's going to come back and read the script tag. So again, for the intents and purposes of today, y'all can put your script tag wherever it makes the most sense to you. So you can put your script tag in your head tag, or you can put your script tag in your body tag at the end of the body tag there. So if you've noticed, like we got the question in the chat, does the script tag always go at the end? You should always put your script tag at the end of the body tag if you're choosing to put it in the body tag to begin with. Because y'all will start to notice once we actually start querying for and interacting with our HTML elements from our JavaScript file, that if our script tag is above the HTML elements or the tags, then it's not going to actually be able to interact with that thing. How are we doing so far, folks? Can we drop some emojis in the chat? Get a quick temperature check. I know it might feel like we're taking a little bit of time to get going, but once I start flowing through stuff, folks, I want you to be comfortable. Awesome. I appreciate the feedback, y'all. So I want to make sure that y'all get these fundamentals, because one of my mantras that I usually tell my students is, on the journey of learning to speak these programming languages, it doesn't get any easier. Y'all can see I'm all rainbows and butterflies and sunshine, but I also like to be honest. This journey doesn't get any easier, but you keep getting better. You keep learning more and getting more comfortable with what's going on. So this is why I always say, give yourself the credit where credit is due. About 30 minutes ago, you didn't know anything that I was talking about, but now you are actually improving and learning this stuff in real time. If I say an H1 tag, you know what I'm talking about. If I say a body tag, you know what I'm talking about. So you are getting better with each moment. So remind yourself that and give yourself that credit. So I need to make sure that y'all get the fundamentals, because you're going to realize all the complex stuff that makes code happen is literally just linking together fundamentals stacked on top of each other. So let's clear the slate a little bit.
Someone that is asking if you can scroll up. What did we type for the script tag and the head tag? Do you mind scrolling up?
Cool. I appreciate that. Could you show us again what you put on the script tag? So let's go there. So in our head tag, I put our script tag here, and I put the keyword defer in front of this src. So let's start spacing this out a little bit and make this a little bit more digestible to read. So in our script tag, we just wrote defer after the word script. src actually just stands for source. So if I put this in a little bit of a comment block, and I write source out, again, we start to see the translation here. So the source is asking, hey, where is this information coming from? And then we specify that the source of our script is coming from this script.js file. So source is just shorthanded with src. If we actually write out source, we're going to realize that that's not correct syntax though. And if I click, we're no longer getting our console log showing up, because this is an incorrect keyword. We want the word src specifically. This is where we go back to the importance of syntax. Human language, we're going to say source. Programming language, and specifically in the language of HTML, we're going to say src. If we don't translate from our human brains and say SRC, then the HTML doc is going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So we need to make sure that we write that correctly there. So hopefully that gave folks the time. Oh, I appreciate the feedback in the chat, y'all. Hopefully that gave folks time to kind of catch up, see what's going on in the script tag, and then see that we have an SRC tag here as well. I mean, sorry, my apologies. An SRC property is what it's actually called. I'll unpack that a little later, but I want to make sure we're picking up a little bit of speed now. But remember that.
Remember, you're never gonna.
Oh, sorry, somebody was asking what's in your script again. That was also my daughter. She's watching along with us tonight, guys.
Awesome. So your daughter's gonna be HTML and JS whiz by the end of this. So
she's 7, but yeah, here's hoping.
So just tell her to sign up for Flatiron at the end of this program. That's it. You'll be good. So I'm just gonna paste into the chat what I wrote, so folks can also refer to that as well. So in the script tag is a open caret script, the word defer, and then I just hit enter. I wrote SRC to translate source for our HTML. I put an equal sign, a quote, and then I wrote the name of the file. So while we're here, let's talk about it. Let's unpack it again. Let me kind of roll it back to when we had source above here. So the source is just looking for what file and where it at. That's all the source is really concerned with. So this combination of a keyword with an equal sign and then something following it in HTML is called a property. You'll also hear the word attribute thrown around sometimes as well. I don't really have like a shorthand mnemonic for that at the moment, but sometimes like the inspiration hits at a random moment. So if I think of a way to make it more digestible, I'll definitely relay that for y'all. But we have source, SRC. What file is this and where is it at? It is in the same place we are. So we don't have to give a specific different path. We can just write the file name as is, and then we add the .js to it as well. You also will notice sometimes folks put a dot in the forward slash. This is the way that you communicate a path that is in the same folder. I don't know why folks chose a dot and a forward slash, but that's syntax. And like I told you at the beginning, syntax isn't really arguable. But the two ways we can do this is with a dot forward slash or without it, because all three files are in the same scope. They all are in the same folder. So for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to get rid of this here real quick, and I'm going to show y'all that we can do either or. So if I just pull this over really quickly, now that we're refreshed on the fact that those are where our three files are, I'm just going to hit the play button. And look at that. We got our console log showing up in the console, which means information's coming from our JavaScript file. We have a pink background, which means information's coming from our CSS. And if I also change this SRC and I say dot forward slash, and then I click the play button, look at that. We're still getting our console log and we're still getting everything else going properly. So again, this is where you start to, like I usually would say, like choose your fighter, you know, anyone gets like the game reference, or like pick your starter Pokemon, so to speak. And I always got my Mudkip on my side. But pick your starter Pokemon or pick your path. How do you want to do this? The moments where you have a choice to make when you're developing, feel free to make a decision. We can write this either way. So y'all can choose which way you want to actually write this source for our script tag. So I'll leave it up to y'all. You can do it this way, or you can do dot forward slash. This is when folks in the chat are probably saying, what would you recommend, Sam? I would recommend dot forward slash. The reason why is because this is more safe. This is specifically telling this HTML file, hey, look in the same folder that you're in. In that same folder that you're in, specifically, look for something called script.js. So this is more secure this way. So y'all are like start to realize I want minimal bugs. So I try to make sure that I'm like abiding by the syntax and the conventions as closely as possible. Then there's moments where you can kind of play around with the syntax a little bit more, where those scopes are a little bit more gentle is where I like to have a little bit more fun with it. But some of this stuff is configuring our code base. We can't really do much without our code base actually being configured properly. So with respect to time, let's pick up a little speed and let's start rolling. We have a script tag that's connected. We have a link tag that's connecting our CSS. For visual sake, I'm just going to collapse our head tag here, and we're going to work in our body tag. So what I'm going to do here is just clean up these H1s a little bit. And what I'm going to do is highlight the different types of tags that exist. So I'm just going to leave 2 different H1s because that'll make sense when we get to our JavaScript portion of this, where we start selecting each of these elements and changing what's in them. But again, we can't really do too much without having knowledge of what other tags we have access to. So I'm just going to click the play button and just see our hello everyone show up twice. So one tag that is also text-based that folks might see a lot is called a P tag. P is just shorthand for paragraph. So if we put some random text in here, like maybe let's hypothetically say Mudkip is the best starter, ... change my mind. I know folks are probably rolling in the chat for that one. If folks have any personal reservations there, I don't know why that just changed there. I'm just trying to space that out a little bit. Awesome. And if we click the play button, look at that. We got some text on the page as well, a different way. So this is another way that you can put some text onto the page as well. Then we have image tag, which is something that's pretty practical as well. So if we create an image tag, the way that we write that is with the word img. So when we do that, we're actually creating an image tag. This is where we have to remember not to necessarily use our human brains and translate over to our programming language communication thought. Not human language, programming language. Because if you write image out like a human being, it's not going to give you what you think. But if we mark this up properly with an img tag, we're actually going to get an image to show up. So I'm going to say img, and then we're going to tag in our pal src again, which is just the source of the image. Where is this image coming from? Boom. We want to know where this image is coming from. So what I'm going to do is provide that to this image tag. So when it comes to images, we also want to be mindful of accessibility. And some folks might not have the ability to actually see what that image is. But if you provide an alt text, as it's called, it will allow screen readers to be able to describe what the image is actually highlighting. So you would say ALT for alt, and then you can actually provide what it is in here in case someone is unable to actually see that image, and or if someone is just choosing to use a screen reader or the image doesn't load. So I'm just going to put here Mudkip. Boom. And then I'm going to do a self-closing tag there. So far, if I click the play button, we see, look at that. My link is broken, but we at least got some text to let us know that that is supposed to be an image of Mudkip. So Mudkip is a Pokemon, by the way, if folks aren't familiar. If Pokemon is not ringing a bell for you, just if you like cats or puppies, or anything that it is that interests you, I want you to follow suit with what I'm about to do, but focus on getting an image for something that resonates with you. I looked at the chat at a bad time because I see someone saying that Torchic is better, and we're here to learn CSS, so I'm not going to debate, but Torchic does turn into Blaziken, and Blaziken is OP. I'll leave it at that. So we want to get a source for our image. So I'm going to go to the internet and just look up an image, and I'm going to get the link for that. Remember when I was writing before in our head tag, the source is just asking, what is this a file, and or where is this coming from? So we're going to go to the internet and then choose whatever it is that interests you. Choose whatever it is that makes you happy, whatever brings you joy. Mudkip is my go-to. So I'm just going to go to the internet. I'm going to choose to go to Google. Feel free to choose any search engine of your preferred choosing, and I'm going to type Mudkip. Mudkip. Bam. So look, come on, look at that. Look at that face. Come on, y'all. How could you know? So I'm going to go over to my images. And if we kind of scroll down, we have some different opportunities for different images. And I always like this super cute image of Mudkip playing in the water. So what you're going to do for the image that you want to incorporate is you're going to right click if you're on Windows, or if you're on Mac, you have to click the way that you get the drop down options to show up. And I'm just going to do copy image address. Remember, we're on the internet. In this bar, we type in web addresses. So if we use our human brain real quick and think about programming languages and human languages, a web address is like a human way of saying an address. Where's the location of this? But a web address is just the address on the internet, on the web. So we want to copy the image address so that we know where this is actually coming from. And then I'm going to go back to our development site, and I'm going to change the source to that actual image object. I mean, that image link. My apologies, folks. I'm going to just space this a little bit because I'm just noticing that, there we go. Not spacing for me. I'm trying to indent it a little bit. But this is connected to that source. Yeah, it's not spacing for me for some reason, folks. I hope it's working for y'all though. If I click the play button, we're going to see, look at that cute little Mudkip taking up so much space in our browser. So with time allowing, we will go and interact with this image in our CSS, and we can resize it if we choose to. How are we doing? Yeah, I'm noticing that. I'm like trying to make sure it's like we're doing like a paint and sip or something, keeping good time and pace and whatnot. Importance of the code in JavaScript, I don't really know the importance. Make a web page interactive. Precisely. So we have this gigantic image of Mudkip, which I'll kind of just leave here for the time being, especially for the sake of time. And what I'm going to do is let's talk about our JavaScript a little bit. So the highlight I like to make about the way that we connect each of these is if we kind of think about this in this way, our JavaScript file is like a script that an actor is reading. So the whole essence of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS is we're putting on a show. We're reading a script, and that's actually interacting with the stage, which is our HTML document. So if we actually want to interact with our elements using JavaScript, we have to go and query for them. So query, like question, like searching and trying to find this information. So there's a bunch of different ways to select elements, but my go-to is called query selector. So whenever you query select something, if we want to keep track of that thing, then what we'll do is actually make a variable for it. And I'm realizing we didn't go into variables. So we'll tag into it now as we're here. I was having too much fun with y'all in the chat. So there are different ways that you can declare variables in JavaScript. So our goal here in the last bit of time that we have is to declare a variable, query for our image tag, and change Mudkip to Torchic, because we obviously have some reservations in the chat. So in order to do that, we need to declare a variable first. So the first thing we're going to do is declare a variable. There are three ways we can declare a variable. We can use the word var, we can use the word let, or we can use the word const. So for whatever reason, when I hit enter, it's auto indenting, but these can be on the same line and space. So var is something that you will notice has is not used often in development. What I'll say quickly is that var has scoping issues where it is too readily accessible across the code, and sometimes that can cause conflict. So you'll notice in more modern code, we have let and const used to declare variables. What is a variable? Let's do a little etymology. Variable. So variable is just something that is able to vary. It has the ability to change. And this is kind of just helping you conceptualize what it is. This is just a placeholder, and it is reserving some space in memory. and it has the ability to vary. You can change it if you choose to. This doesn't completely apply when you use the keyword const. And if you have a little more time, I'd delve into it. But when you use let, you're able to actually change, or rather, I would say reassign the information that is corresponding with that variable. So for the time being, we're going to go with let. So I'm just going to comment out this const, and then I'm going to just copy and paste it to the bottom of the code here. So we're going to say let, and we're going to create a variable. So I'm going to say let the image equal. So what we're doing here is called assignment in development. So if that sounds a little bit too like tech jargony, remember, equal sign, assignment. We are assigning this variable a value. So if I say let image equal 1, and we console log, so I'm just going to copy my pal console log here, and we console log the image, and press play, we will see, look at that. Hello, folks, 1. So console log is actually a combination of the console, which is here, we see our output, and this dot notation is being used to call the function log on the console. So we're logging this information to the console. Similar to how if you have a journal log, you're just logging that information to the console. So we created a variable called the image, and the image is being logged to the console. So console is the thing that is displaying our information. Log is a function being called on the console, and we are passing what is called in here as a argument when we're using this function. So console log can take in 2 arguments. Well, it can take in more than 1 argument. My apologies there, folks. But I usually put 2 arguments, and the first argument I usually put so we can highlight some meaningful text. So I'm going to say this is the image, colon space, and then the second argument is going to be the variable that we had. So if I click play, look at that. We have this is the image, 1. So the image is currently 1 at the moment. And I noticed a question about capitalization mattering. So what we want to do is make sure that we're consistent with our variable names. So something that we'll notice is in JavaScript, we generally have a camel casing format going on here. So the first letter is conventionally lowercase, and then the second letter is uppercase. There are certain times where if you're writing things, whether it be in all caps or with a capital first letter, JavaScript is going to think you're trying to say something else. But you'll notice that the convention for naming variables and naming functions is usually camel cased. So kind of we think like a camel. Let's see if my emoji palette shows up, and if we get a camel, bam, look at that. So a camel kind of has like that process of going up and down because of its humps. So we're camel casing is what it's called here. So to speed up a little bit, and then if we have time, I'll take any other questions. We're going to query select for that image. So query selector is a function that we call on the document. So I'm going to say document.query selector, because that's a built-in function that we have. And then we're going to query select based upon the type of tag. So I know that an image tag is img. So if I click the play button, I should see that we have an HTML element, which is that image tag itself. So remember I was telling y'all that that image tag has a source to it. If I say the image.src, that's allowing me to interact with that image's source from here in our JavaScript file. And if I put an equal sign, I'm going to reassign the value of the source of that image. Here's where I will put Torchic in here. Oh, look at that face. Let's get a happy Torchic though. I'm just going to copy the image address. I'm going to go over to our code base, and I'm going to reassign this. But the key, remember, is this should be in quotes so that it becomes a string. Wow, that is a long web address. If I click the play button, look at that. Did y'all see that? Wow, yeah, that's a huge image. That's a really huge image. That's a big Torchic. Wow. When we press play, first, the HTML loaded Mudkip because that's what we have in our image tag. Then our script tag came along afterward. It's happening in like slightly a split second. Our image tag came up afterwards, and our JavaScript came up afterward and reassigned the source of our image and now changed it from Mudkip to Torchic. So we click again. It's happening a little quicker this time, so we're not seeing Mudkip's lovely face. But Mudkip is there first, and then Torchic actually shows up after the fact. I will pause there with respect to time and just kind of check in with how we're doing and if we are taking any questions.
I have a question.
I was clearly having too much fun. Did you wait, Corey? Did you?
That was my daughter.
Oh,
There was
okay,
one
cool.
question in the chat that said, why are some arrows pointing towards each other before script?
Where is that happening?
So in the Q&A, you can open the Q&A, and I don't know where exactly.
Let me see. If I open up the Q&A, I see what was it about the camel? And then the first question though was, why are the arrows pointing towards each other before script? Is that here in our actual HTML file? So that was, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, but Rochelle, if you're still here in the chat, if you want to follow up. If you're referring to the script tag, okay, that's probably this. So what's happening here is I just spaced out our script tag. So remember I told y'all that there's different ways that you can write your HTML. So you can write it in one line like this, or you can space it out. So I just chose to space out the source, and then I just hit enter before the actual closing there. But you could just keep it all in one line, or you could keep them like this. Or you could do this as well and put a space in between them. So just showing y'all different ways that you can format your tags because everyone has a different preference. Awesome. And then the last question, what was it about the camel? So when I was speaking about the camel reference, that was just in relation to camel casing, which is just something that you'll hear said a lot in JavaScript, because that is a convention that we go by. So when you name stuff, it is going with like starting with a small letter for the first word. And then the moment you start a new word, instead of putting a space or putting a dash, what you actually do is just switch the letter. So if we call this variable the image on the page, you see how the letters are kind of going up and down, kind of like a camel's hump. And this is where the naming kind of comes from of camel casing. So hopefully that helps clarify that question as well.
Looks like there's another question in the chat. Can the image from the script be delayed so the HTML image appears for a few seconds longer?
So it absolutely can be. I would say that where we're at as of today, it would take a little bit to make sense to what's making that happen. But if you're interested, there's something called timeout. So let me just look at that up real quick. So timeout JavaScript. Set timeout. There we go. So there's a JavaScript function called set timeout, and you can actually interact with that function and get the syntax as to how to delay that process for a little bit. So we would pretty much delay that change there. I think I can actually just copy this because the syntax is ready to go. So if I copy this and we go over to our JavaScript file, if we actually wait until like maybe 5 seconds or something, what I'll do is I'll drop that here. So I put set timeout. I just copied it from that MDN reference site. So set timeout is a function. In here, this is taking in another function as an argument. This is where stuff starts to stack a little bit. But again, if you're interested in this syntax, you can look into it more. When we put 5,000 here, this is actually going to make it 5 seconds. So I believe it's counting by milliseconds. So instead of console logging after 5 seconds, we are actually going to run this line of code after 5 seconds. So I'm going to copy this here that we used to change the image. I'm going to cut that and then paste it in between our set timeout. And if I press play, you should see Mudkip. 1, 2, 3, and bam, Torchic shows up. So these are some super neat pre-built JavaScript functions that you can actually use to kind of play with this. You kind of see how we're starting a show. Like I said, when you're playing with or speaking the dialect of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, there's a lot that you can do to put on a show. You read the script, you style the stage a little bit, and you have fun with it. So these are some things you can do to kind of actually make this a little bit more interactive. Look at that, folks. 90 minutes ago, y'all had no idea what a tag was, no idea what a variable was, no idea what a body tag background color was. And now look at you, you have a web application that shows Mudkip and then turns into Torchic. Let's give ourselves a round of applause, folks. And this is the mindset. You just take it a little bit at a time and you just keep making sure that you're not just necessarily copy and pasting code, but you're actually thinking about what you're doing and trying to translate your thought process. Why did I write that? What did that make happen? And how can I maybe do that next time? So, awesome job, folks. Thanks for joining us today. I'll be here all week, literally, because I mean, this is my job. Corey, whenever you're ready to take the mic, you know, I can chat.
We are good. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for tonight. It was amazing.
Pikachu.
Everybody, well, apparently my daughter wanted Pikachu, so that's the only person you disappointed. But it was a great lesson, and I'm so glad that everybody got to stick around. Sorry for going a little bit over, but it seemed like everybody was happy to stay and ask questions. Please know that we do host these events once a month, and we try to cover different topics. So catch us next month for another software engineering event. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me and follow up. Thank you again and have a wonderful evening. Bye, y'all.